Petri Dish is a product of Petri Dish Media, all rights reserved. All characters during the show, such as Donatella Iglesias, Jimmy Coconuts, and Tyler Jerry, are copywritten and are satirical. Any similarity to any persons living or dead is completely coincidental. Petri Dish is a science comedy podcast and should not be used as medical advice. Do not get medical advice from a podcast.
And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein
Science!
I know the human being and can coexist peacefully.
This was thou findest.
Petri Dish.
Hey everyone, this is Petri Dish. I'm Sean.
I'm Nathan.
And today we are going to talk about booze and hangover science.
Sean, did you know that gin used to be called Dutch Courage? And it's because the Dutch brought gin. And the British were like, you're drunk all the time. But then the British started drinking it. And now they're drunk all the time.
Did the Dutch bring it in that William and Mary coming over in the Glorious Revolution?
Yeah, that was exactly the event.
Oh.
1688 was the emergence of gin in England. And it's been downhill ever since.
Holy shit.
Yeah, you can actually draw a direct line from Dutch Courage in 1688 to Brexit. Certainly to the making of Boris Johnson.
The beginning of their collective stupidity. It's kind of just all downhill.
Oh man, they were great before that. Right?
It's all that Shakespeare shit.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the first recording of the new year.
Oh yeah.
But not the first episode of the new year, but the first recording of the new year. And,
Oh, that's true.
You know, we've all recovered from our hangovers since then. Did you do anything special to recover from your hangover?
I didn't have hangovers.
What?
Yeah, so I have this like special thing where I take electrolytes and I sprinkle it into a little bit of catnip. Okay, and I throw that with kimchi.
What the fuck?
And I microwave it for 30 minutes.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Wait, 30 minutes?
Yeah, I wait till I hear the 17th pop. Okay, and I know by then that the microwave has made a lot of little Dr. Manhattans.
Okay.
And I eat that, and I use their power. And I can repair myself.
Holy shit. Is that before or after drinking?
I mean, I've only ever done it after I started drinking.
Yeah, okay. I got you.
Yeah. So it's like my way of making stem cells, basically.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Catnip,
Okay.
secret ingredient. Do you get hangovers?
Yeah, sure.
Wow, I guess I got all the good genes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Just kidding, kids. Don't drink and drive, okay?
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's important.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I don't think it's Republican for me to say that. It's
No.
important for kids to not drink and drive. I know you looked at me disapprovingly. Like, Nathan, don't moralize to the children. Let them drink and drive and make their own decisions. I'm like, no, Sean, police state. Crack, crack, crack.
Right. Okay, so we're going to start out talking about booze, and then we're going to shift over to the part I think people have a lot less experience with, which is trying to deal with hangovers.
Yeah, and I think in general, the irony about both alcohol and hangovers is that for how ubiquitous it is in our society and how much it affects people's lives, it's kind of murky science, actually.
Yeah, very much so. That was my experience researching.
Scientists are always hungover trying to experiment.
Right, yeah.
And then they're like, ah!
Yeah. All the science is pretty bad and unreproducible. So let's dive right into it, starting out with a little bit about the booze.
Some preliminary boozing. Okay, guys, we're going to hop into this booze subject by talking about just a little preliminary boozing. The history of booze, how is booze made in the first place?
Yeah.
Okay, now Sean told me to do the talking.
Yeah.
Now, the irony here, though, is I don't drink because
Oh my god.
I'm a good boy.
Oh, you're such a naughty guy. You're the one that peer pressured me into start drinking.
That's true, I did.
Yeah, you're such a naughty broad. Anyway,
Sean's been to rehab three times.
You know both history and drinking a shitload of stuff. So tell me a little bit about booze history. What do you got?
Okay, so I know that civilization starts in ancient Mesopotamia. So I know that we made some booze there.
That's true.
It's at least as old as sitting around with wheat.
Yeah.
And I know Chinese people also had it. I guess I don't know that, I just intuit it.
I think you're right, though, that kind of any place that people were sitting around long enough
Right.
to kind of brew something.
Hunter-gatherers probably had it too, though, and we just don't have physical evidence because they walked around all the time.
Right, yeah. So basically the main physical evidence we have is from jugs.
Right.
And we've taken those jugs and we've been able to detect alcoholic residue on the inside. So, we're talking like 7,000 BCE.
And at this point, we're talking about really just fermenting old, gross grains, right?
Yeah.
We ferment grains, we drink that gnarly shit. It's not until much later, till, ironically, in the Arab world, they start to really, really figure out distillation.
Right, and distillation is how we get stuff where, you have the really high alcohol content.
Yeah.
And it gets real tasty. And so that's like the 9th century. So we're talking way later, almost 8,000 years later. And then from there, it spread to like Europe and Asia and all that shit. So then, now that we've talked about a little bit of the history, right, all over the place, we got the, fermentation, we got the distillation. Now it's like, how do we make the booze?
Well, this is where the science comes in.
So you need to take some kind of feedstock that has some kind of sugars in it, some kind of carbohydrates, and then you give that to yeast in usually conditions that are called anaerobic, so there's no oxygen around. And then they take that food and they eat it up, and then they poop out ethanol and carbon dioxide.
How
as
is yeast
byproducts.
alive with no oxygen? I thought everything needed oxygen.
So definitely not everything needs oxygen.
Why?
But most of the things that don't need oxygen are single-celled.
Listen to our previous episodes.
Yeah, exactly. The extremophile episode.
You extremophilic boys.
And so yeast can definitely survive without oxygen. It's just what that does is it makes it so they can't use their electron transport chain in their mitochondria.
Okay.
So when you can't use your mitochondria to make all of that tasty ATP, right, you need to focus more on the glycolysis side. And the glycolysis has sort of this like side reaction you can do that gets you that ATP, but it involves also making ethanol and carbon dioxide in the process.
So we kind of waterboard these yeast.
Yep.
And the byproduct is they make us the good shit.
Yes.
Okay.
And you want to try to ensure that the conditions are such that you don't have other bacteria and stuff growing, because there are anaerobic bacteria that also like to eat carbohydrates.
How do you even sort that?
Yeah, so sometimes that means having to have it at different temperatures or different pH or adding different kinds of things in there.
Jeez.
That can be sort of antimicrobial towards the bacteria, stuff like that. And then sometimes, way back when, it was kind of more luck.
Right.
Like some pots would turn out shitty and some pots would be good.
Sure.
Right, like with sake, when they were chewing up the rice and spitting it into the pot, they were introducing a lot of yeast and bacteria in there.
Right, you're kind of just hoping for the best there. You're shooting in the dark.
Right. And so, kind of depending on what you use as the feedstock, will end up being these sort of byproducts that can make a lot of the flavor of different alcohols. Like, the other shit from the grapes that aren't the carbohydrates will add a lot of the flavor for the different kinds of grapes, the different kinds of wines that we end up with. And yeah, so that's more or less how you make booze. And then if you want anything that has a kind of higher alcohol level, then you need to distill it
Okay.
to kind of concentrate that alcohol goodness.
Okay.
All of this stuff, I think a lot of people might know already, or have some kind of semblance of an idea about.
Right.
I think the first big part where science surprisingly has a hard time with all of this is how alcohol affects us biologically.
Right.
So, part of the thing is that ethanol, if you ever look at the molecule ethanol, it's really small.
Okay.
It's barely bigger than water.
Okay.
And when you drink it, it goes all over the place in your body. It really does not have a hard time getting into any of your cells. It doesn't have a hard time getting into your brain, all your organs. So that makes it kind of hard for scientists to know for sure who it's hitting and who it's interacting with.
Because it's kind of just hitting everything.
Yeah, but we do have some clues, mainly because booze definitely makes your brain go poopy, right? You start acting kind of weird, you lose motor function, right? You're kind of stumbling around and everything when you drink too much alcohol. So we are pretty sure that it has some kind of effect on neurons, that it's actually kind of messing around with the function of your brain.
Okay.
And so there's actually a lot of receptors that we have now started to figure out. And this is actually, for some of these, the details on how ethanol interacts with these proteins is past 10 to 20 years stuff.
Cool, okay. So, neuroscience is driven by alcohol science.
There's a group of neuroscientists that are hyper-focused on trying to figure out which receptors in the neuron-neuron junctions are responsible for ethanol's effects.
Right.
In part because...
If you figured that out, you could, cure hangovers.
I think actually what they're thinking about the most is alcohol addiction.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, because in a perfect world, we figure out hangovers, and then we can all just be addicted to alcohol, and it won't matter.
I think these people want to take care of the addiction first.
I think you're naive. They're paid for. They're paid for by the alcohol lobby.
So, in any case, one of the really big neurotransmitters that's an inhibitory neurotransmitter is called GABA.
Okay.
And what I mean by inhibitory is that when GABA is released and detected by the GABA receptor,
Right.
that helps to turn neurons off. So neurons are, they're firing all over the place. Maybe you're anxious about something, and so they're just like popping off.
Yeah.
And then GABA gets released and you start to calm down, which is why some of the drugs that we take for anxiety actually help make GABA do its job better. Ethanol works in a similar kind of way. Ethanol actually binds to the GABA receptor and then makes it more active. So it does its job more in turning off your neurons.
Oh, okay. And that's why we get less anxious when we drink. We get more chill. We're more DTF.
Yeah, it sort of depresses your inhibition.
So booze is attaching to the receptors.
Yeah. And it's not just GABA. It seems like it affects a lot of other receptors also.
Right.
Like the NMDA receptor, which is important for memory.
Right.
Which is why you can forget stuff. It's the same receptor that like ketamine can hit and make it so that you have dissociative states and you can't remember shit. And then also the glycine receptor, which is important for motor function, which can help explain why you get all stumbly and shit. So, there's this kind of burgeoning science where we're kind of better understanding the nitty-gritty of what kind of receptors we're hitting and everything like that. I do think one of the major thrusts of that is to try to figure out ways to help people no longer be addicted to alcohol, because it does have a sort of self-reinforcing reward cycle.
Right.
And it is physically and behaviorally addictive.
Right.
And so a lot of people can suffer from that. So how about we take a break, and then when we come back, we can talk a little bit more about booze specifically and all the ways that it is bad for your health, Nathan.
Right.
I'm looking at you. Hey guys, if you are listening to this, then you're already a fan of the podcast, and that's great. What you might not know is that while we're recording the podcast, we actually cut out minutes and sometimes even hours of content.
Days.
Because Nathan's got a real saucy, naughty mouth, and sometimes he gets off topic and says really inappropriate things. But we were listening through and we thought, hey, maybe some of this could actually be funny to some of our listeners. And so we've decided that we're going to try to release it on Patreon for just the Patreon members only. And it's going to cover, all kinds of exciting off topics, such as
Why one lone hero should have brought a gun to Hogwarts. Why is the sky green and no one else knows? Where's Dad? Why is he gone?
Oh boy. Well, that's the kind of delicious content that you're going to get if you sign up for the Petri Dish Patreon. It starts as low as $1 a month. It's a monthly charge. And you can check it out at patreon.com/Petri Dish.
Guys, remember, science in its truest form is raw and unvarnished. Okay, get the rawest science you can fuck on Petri Raw Dish. On Petri Dish Uncut. Okay, Sean, so I've always been told that booze is good for you. Obviously, if you die from booze, it's now bad for you. But prior to death, that you drink a glass of wine every
couple
day.
hours.
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard that. But if you have a glass of booze like twice a week, you're gonna not get certain diseases. If you have a shot of whiskey every morning, you're better at jazz. If you, I've heard. Like every week you hear in a different pop science article online, booze is actually good for you. And like
Right.
every mother that we grew up around in Manhattan Beach cheers with her Chardonnay.
Yeah, it always has a really high intersectionality with that group. It's always like, booze makes you do yoga better.
Right.
Pilates and booze,
Yeah.
right? It's like always stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I will say that it is probably useful for us to, at the start, distinguish between the sort of moderate/light drinking versus heavy and chronic drinking, right?
Is there a definition for that, or is that very loosey-goosey?
It is fairly loosey-goosey, but I would say that usually the heavy and chronic drinking is about drinking enough every day to get drunk.
Okay.
Whereas moderate to light drinking is not drinking every single day and drinking just a little bit of alcohol when you're doing it. So what I will say is that the health benefits for even the moderate to light drinking is controversial, and it kind of goes back and forth.
Right.
And so...
Because there will be all sorts of studies that come out that we're about to talk about. But then on the other hand, people are like, it's a poison.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for example, sometimes you'll find an association between light to moderate drinking and some kind of specific health output.
Right. Yoga.
Yeah, like yoga. But in this case, there was one study where they saw that light to moderate drinking, you see a decrease in blood clots, an increase in HDL, which is the quote-unquote good cholesterol.
Okay.
It's not cholesterol, but whatever. Don't worry about it. And then...
Don't talk down to me.
HDL is the shuttle that carries cholesterol.
I knew it was a shuttle. See, you said HDL, and I knew they were like a FedEx competitor. so I was waiting for the bullshit to arrive.
Yeah, wait, isn't there one? It's like DHS or something?
Yeah. I'm smart.
But even in studies like this, where you see, decreased blood clots, increased HDL, the fact of the matter is that alcohol does stuff all over your body. And realistically, these studies aren't looking at all outcome effects in your body. And issues like how much your liver has to work to process that alcohol if you're drinking even one glass every single day, and the reactive oxygen species that are getting made and damaging your liver in the process. It's likely that any amount of alcohol is not actually good for you. It's just some of the times it might not be terrible for you.
Right. So, like, there might be these tertiary effects or something. At the end of the day, it is damaging your liver. Like, maybe there's a correlation with the decrease in blood clots, but your liver's going to fail.
Yeah. So there's some data that suggests that moderate drinkers maybe live longer than people who abstain.
I mean, that's such a classist thing, right? It's like people who can afford Chardonnay
Sure.
live longer.
Yeah, and there's other studies that show that there's no difference between the two, but both groups definitely live longer than heavy drinkers.
Right.
So that's why in this conversation, I think it's useful to kind of group them apart, because the conversation gets way simpler if we just talk about heavy drinkers.
Sure. Right? If you're drunk every day, you're going to get shot.
You're gonna die on the street like Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah. Well, that was from incest. God struck him down for incest, Sean.
Anybody lying in the gutter is because of incest?
Not anybody. Edgar Allan Poe. Didn't he marry his 12-year-old cousin? Like real talk.
Something like that,
I thought that's what happened.
Yeah.
And then she died because God was mad. God wasn't done yet. Killed Edgar Allan Poe.
Shouldn't it just have killed Edgar Allan Poe? Wasn't he the one at fault? Did he really have to take the 12-year-old girl?
God is sexist. You ever read the Bible, guys? Like, God's a dick. I've read Golden Compass. He's just some senile douchebag. And Metacom.
Hashtag HBO.
Wait, is the guy's name Metacom in Golden Compass?
Metatron.
Okay, because Metacom was definitely like a Native American who, like, Puritans were mad at, because he was like, we need independence, and they're like, you gotta go.
Well, Metatron is also like a really Transformers kind of name, but whatever.
That is true.
Anyway, I'm not done talking about the health thing.
Oh, okay.
One of the other things I want to mention is that some of the studies will focus on what are called congeners, which are the things in booze besides the ethanol and water.
Okay.
Like in wine, famously, resveratrol. This is like sexy compound. You'll read all kinds of articles about it. But like, how this is the thing, it's anti-cancer.
Right.
So resveratrol is an antioxidant. And antioxidant is another buzzword that everyone's like, antioxidants are clearly good for you.
Right.
So that totally makes up for the alcohol.
Doesn't make any sense. I'm very pro-oxidant. And yeah, because I'm...
How do you do that? How are you pro-oxidant?
See? Idiot. Oxygen. It's in the name.
God damn it.
It's true, I don't know what an oxidant is. Okay, so Reservoir Dogs are in wine, and they help. This is like a classic traditional Chinese medicine problem. If there's this thing in wine that's good, why don't we just take that thing and put it in a pill and just eat that pill? Like, wine has all the other shit that's bad for you in it.
Right, so that's what's beautiful, is that the reason why these articles are getting written is because people have taken it out, and in very high concentrations,
right,
it can do stuff to cells.
Sure, like if you're in a vat of it, you can actually go through space-time.
Yes.
That's cool.
Just like Dune. Yeah, I got you.
You gotta put your thumb on it, huh? Let the people discover it on their own.
I don't know if they're gonna get it. Wait until the Timothée Chalamet movie about Dune comes out.
Is he in?
He's gonna be Paul.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's cool. Is Armie Hammer gonna be in it? Can it just be Call Me By Your Name too? Dune.
Baron, he's just like,
Oh my god, just
mostly gay
just
scenes.
fucking a sand trap. Dude, I can't wait. Best episode ever of this show.
All right. So resveratrol, concentrated.
Yeah.
Okay. You take that, you put it on the cells. It kills cancer cells. It can be cardioprotective in mice. It can be neuroprotective in mice. It can be anti-aging in mice. Okay, so like
It's not anti-aging in suburban women, I tell you what. Just getting older and older.
they're gonna be so bummed hearing you say that. So the thing is that when you look in humans and you do these clinical trials with the amount of resveratrol people will take, even in pill form,
Right.
For the most part, resveratrol does not seem to have any huge effect in people.
Okay.
One way or another, and definitely not in the amount you get from drinking wine. Unless you're drinking way too much wine, in which case you're going to totally fuck up your liver and die. So,
Right, sure. It's just not quite worth it.
yeah, it's not going to work out, right? So the idea that like, oh, well, you know, red wine is good because it has more resveratrol than white wine.
Right.
None of that means anything.
It's the same thing as like, oh, this rhino horn has like tiny trace amounts of Viagra.
Yep.
It's gonna make you hard. And it's like, guys, like that's not enough horn.
Yeah,
You know, like you need more horn.
you need bathtubs full of horn.
Yeah, you need to bathe in rhino.
And then once we get to just the alcohol stuff, everyone knows alcohol fucks you up.
Right.
I mean, this is no surprise. Right off the bat, liver problems is the biggest thing.
But aren't there a lot of hard seltzers now that are actually really healthy for you? Like White Claw, isn't it 0% alcohol and 100% resveratrol?
What the fuck is White Claw?
White Claw's... wait, bro? No, White Claw, bro?
What is it?
It's the hard seltzer that's really popular right now.
What the fuck is a hard seltzer? Are you saying
We
like
have
it's-
actually come up to the limits of my knowledge because I've never drunk it. I just...
is it like LaCroix with alcohol in it?
Yeah, I guess. I think it's kind of a similar vibe. It's supposed to be like low carb and like healthy for you by comparison. You know, like, White Claw, it's 60% of the time you're drunk every time, you know?
Yeah, bummed out. Okay, so
I can't believe I haven't heard White Claw.
I don't know what that is.
Our listeners think you're dumb.
Yeah, they hate me now. for
But
sure.
you're handsome.
So, liver problems.
Pretty
Alcoholic
passive-aggressive of you.
alcoholic hepatitis is when you get inflammation in your liver from too much alcohol.
Wait, so there's hepatitis A, hepatitis B,
Yep.
hepatitis C, and
Yep.
now you tell me there's hepatitis alcohol?
Yes.
Is that just hepatitis
A? No. No. A through, I think,
A
past,
through Z.
there's actually a lot of
classy
them.
like that.
So, I don't think it goes all the way up to Z, but I think there's like a few more past C.
Why are there so many hepatitis? What?
I don't
That's a
think,
real question. Why are there so many hepatitis?
I don't think that's how you make that plural, but why are there so many hepatitises?
Why?
Because that virus likes to kind of evolve into separate strains or whatever and then infect our livers.
Oh, okay, that's cool. All hepatitis get in your liver?
The HEPA part is liver.
Oh!
Yeah.
Okay, my bad.
And then the itis part is inflammation. Yeah.
You sound so redneck when you say addis.
Yeah. It's the itis, but itis is inflammation.
Addis.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, you got some itis? Use some tussin.
Use some tussin. You gotta rub that tussin on it, addis.
So, yeah.
Okay, so a lot of liver problems. You get hepatitis alcohol.
Yes. And that's the inflammation part, but if you do it too much, then you'll start to have scarring form in your liver, and that's called cirrhosis.
That's how you spell cirrhosis?
Yeah.
For you guys who don't know, it's spelled Cirrhosis.
Yeah.
Cirrhosis.
How have you been spelling cirrhosis?
Like SCELISCISL, you know? English.
C'est la vie. And then on top of hepatitis and cirrhosis, you can also get fatty liver disease.
Yeah,
You hear that, Nathan?
I have heard of that before, and it always just made me think of tuna.
Oh, because of like fatty tuna.
Yeah, isn't fatty liver good?
Like tasting?
Yeah.
I mean, ask Cannibal Lecter or something like that. I don't know if
Cannibal Lecter. That's so catchy. Or like foie gras. Isn't like foie gras fatty
Yeah,
liver?
I think so. Yeah, and so I think that can make it tastier. Although I'm not sure that that's
It's bad for the
people's-
duck.
I don't know if that's our goal is to make our livers
Ourselves.
tastier
Someone else is going to get to eat this.
for the cannibals out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a buildup of fat within the liver cells.
Okay.
And making them not work very well.
So alcohol, very clearly bad for livers.
Yep.
Okay.
It can also cause cancer. in the mouth, throat, colon, and liver and breast.
Okay, that's pretty, but not the other ones though.
You're right.
Yeah.
Not the skin cancer.
Yeah, see, that's where your liberal science, okay, is trying to deceive us.
The science agenda.
Yeah, you say that's not even all the cancers. That's like a minority of cancers, right? Like we're skin cancer.
Out of all of the possible yes, you're right. You're right. It is in the minority.
Okay, so cancer more likely with alcohol.
And then also addiction and all of the behavioral and cognitive issues that can come with alcohol abuse.
But I mean, that's really people being weak. Right? Like,
oh my god.
Just kidding, guys. Just kidding, guys. Remember,
Holy
addiction.
shit.
Addiction is a disease, and it's best dealt as if a disease, rather than with punitive measures.
You did a really hard U-turn on that.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of you. And then also, I don't know if you knew this one, but ethanol can mess around with your immune system.
You know, I actually did kind of. I knew that in the same way that like people know that if you have witch's hazel, it'll ward off, dogs. Yeah, that's like folklore.
Specifically, your adaptive immune system. So, ethanol dampens the antigen-specific adaptive immune response. So that's the part of your immune system that has memory, that makes your antibodies, stuff like that, okay? But it doesn't dampen your entire immune system. It actually can activate your inflammatory immune system.
But that's kind of bad, right? Because you don't.
That's also bad.
You don't want to activate your immune system when it shouldn't be activated.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we'll get
It's
to
like
it
a
a little
toaster
bit.
oven.
Yeah.
You only want a toaster oven on when you got some stuff to toast.
See, I said yeah to you too early. You know what I mean? I should have waited for you to complete your thought.
How is that wrong?
It's right, but it's inane.
Not like the innate immune system.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, boy. Oh, fucking boy.
He's learning.
Ethanol can also irritate the cells in your gut. And it can fuck up your gut microbiome.
Oh, wait, we don't want that.
No.
My gut microbiome's pretty used to it.
There's all kinds of naughty stuff.
I have my own yeast.
Well, yeah, you do.
Yeah. Like a lot of it, though. Like way more than normal.
That's another turn.
I'm a medical miracle.
Another dangerous turn to conversation I don't want to have.
I'm a yeasty boy.
And then, what I'll also say is that ethanol, in the process of getting detoxified in your liver, generates reactive oxygen species.
Okay, so yeah, what does that mean? So these are live creatures that react to oxygen? That's just me. Right? That's just every person, bro.
Okay.
Okay, now if
Here we go.
it's sulfur-based like
I'm going to break it down for you. What it is it's oxygen that is usually missing or having an extra electron or something like that.
Okay.
And it makes it really easy for it to react with just any other atom sitting around. So it makes that oxygen hyper-reactive. And when it crashes into something, it can break the bond that those atoms were having originally. It can attach itself onto stuff where it's not supposed to be. It generally just wreaks havoc on any of the nearby stuff. It's one of the reasons why hydrogen peroxide is so good at like getting rid of stains or making things not colorful anymore.
So when you drink alcohol, you're basically just turning your guts into hydrogen peroxide.
Kind of. I mean, in a certain sense, the process of detoxifying alcohol, ethanol, produces reactive oxygen species.
So it's kind of dog shit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Wow.
It's not great. I mean, your body's making kind of a hard choice between which thing it's going to keep around. Right. All right, last health thing. Ethanol also can inhibit the production of melatonin. Melatonin is something produced in your brain as a part of your circadian rhythm. It's part of what makes you feel sleepy. And ethanol messes up the production of melatonin so it can throw off your circadian rhythm.
Oh, yeah.
And get you all fucked up. And it's not good for you, Nathan. It's not good for you.
I like my rhythm.
But part of that process can also mess up your hormones.
Okay.
And that can cause issues with things like your circulating levels of testosterone, other hormones, and things like ovulation, Nathan. All right.
So, we have discovered the many ways alcohol is good for you. And also, on occasion, maybe bad. We're going to move on to the next section, the section that you guys are waiting to hear. How do we cure your hangovers? Because Dr. Sean has a miracle cure in store for you. Stay tuned, and we're going to learn, how can you cure your hangover with just 3 easy steps?
Hi guys, I'm Donatello Iglesias. It's a new year, a new decade, and I've found new love, thanks to the dating app Sixes. It's a dating app where people like me, a 2, can finally find someone who they could really love and who could love them back. I, myself a 2, have found a beautiful woman, a wonderful person on the inside who's a 1. And yes, sometimes I look at 3s, and occasionally I'll even look at 4s, and I wonder what could have happened there. But I don't think about it too much because she's so smart and she's so funny, and I know she's the woman for me because we met on 6s. So come to terms with your ugliness and download 6s today.
Okay, guys, we're back with Petri Dish. And now we're going to talk about some really important miracle cures. We're going to talk about hangovers, the surprisingly difficult question of what they really are, and how can Dr. Sean cure your hangover?
Fuck. Okay.
So, Sean, what is a hangover? I've never had one. You've had many.
Boy. God.
What are they?
Man, you saucy broad. You know what a hangover is, and I think that pretty much everyone who is of drinking age and then maybe plus or minus a few years younger than that know what a hangover is, but
There's a movie franchise.
when scientists try to define it,
I've seen the movie.
they say something like this.
Bradley Cooper.
Alcohol! God, you son of a bitch! You shut your whore mouth! Okay.
Open wide.
Alcohol hangover is defined as the experience of various unpleasant physiological and psychological effects that follow the consumption of high quantities of alcohol. The symptoms occur several hours after alcohol consumption, approximately 10 hours, typically after a blood alcohol content, BAC, is greater than 0.08%. Hangovers can last for several hours or even more than 24 hours. Over 47 symptoms of hangover were identified, the most common symptoms being tiredness, headache, nausea, and impaired attention.
You whiffed that, man. So that's our definition of hangovers.
Yeah, and hangovers...
And that sounds very unspecific.
They
There's
did
so
their
much
best.
vague shit in there.
Well, 47 symptoms, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff in there, but hangovers can cause impaired neurological function. It makes you more likely to, like, get into a car accident or have a hard time paying attention at work.
How much money do we lose as a nation state, Sean, every year?
$179 billion is wasted in the USA each year because people are hungover.
Guys, I want you to think, how much of that money, if you weren't hungover, would go straight into Michael Bloomberg's pocket?
right.
Revolt! Revolution!
Yeah. This is all just about turning people into dollar signs.
But yeah, so hangovers are pretty deleterious to everything.
Yeah, it's not great for you. It's not
Right.
great for, like, if you got to go into work or something. Some people are resistant to hangovers, actually. There's some
Really?
lucky people.
That should be a superhero.
Yeah, I think so.
It's like his name's Doug. He's like, doesn't get hangovers.
So there are some people who they can get wasted and then either have mild hangovers or no hangover at all.
It's pretty
which
cool.
sort of bears the question of, like, what actually is a hangover on, like, a biological level.
If not just psychosomatic.
Yeah, which it probably isn't. Because I don't think we would will ourselves to feeling so shitty after having fun drinking.
You'd be surprised. Okay, there's a lot of Hulu shows that like they exist, and I don't feel good watching them.
What the fuck? You're just gonna take a dig at Hulu? Holy shit. Isn't Fleabag on Hulu?
No, that's on Amazon.
Does Hulu have nothing?
I mean, it has a lot of network stuff. It has a lot of good shows. It's just they don't make those good shows. They just host those good shows. Like It's Always Sunny's on Hulu.
Yeah.
They don't make it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Wow. Hulu's not gonna be a sponsor anymore, I'll tell you that
Yeah,
much.
damn it. They're withdrawing their sponsorship.
I lost the Hulu money. So,
What causes hangovers?
what causes them? Surprisingly, in science, we are not sure. Okay? We've had a hell of a time trying to figure it out.
Gets too drunk.
Well, so part of the problem is that hangover symptoms kick in when your alcohol levels are going down, and usually you feel the worst when your blood alcohol is pretty much zero.
Sure, because the spiritual effects of your sins are most apparent when the alcohol's left your system.
Sure, yes, I think a lot of Catholic priests would agree with you, but
And they have much wisdom that scientists have forgotten.
so the thing is that there's a lot of physiological effects
Right.
that getting ass blasted on brandy does to your body.
So why is it that brandy, as you know, my favorite drink, makes me much more hungover
Yeah,
than clean spirit vodka? Why is that?
the congeners.
Ah, right, sure.
Yeah.
Like the peasant blood.
For whatever reason, and this is also not entirely clear, having more shit in your alcohol makes it more likely for you to be hungover, And certain things seem to affect people more than other things. So, like,
Yeah.
brandy and rum, for example, are supposed to make people feel really hungover.
Right.
And vodka does not make people feel very hungover.
That makes
unless
sense.
you drink a shitload.
Russia would literally not exist if vodka got jazz ass.
They couldn't do any of that space program shit.
Right.
If they were all hungover all the time.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So, you know, there's these kind of other factors that alcohol consumption causes
Okay.
that kind of get mixed in with hangover symptoms.
Wait, but first, like, why do cogeners even matter? Like, why would those make you more hungover or not?
Right. I mean, so part of the reason why we're not sure is because we do not know what the physical issue with actually the hangover is. And as I get into this more, as I go
Okay.
through each thing,
Okay.
it'll become clearer why this is so confusing. But it's possible maybe that part of it is immune response related.
So, like, you get some weird stuff in wine that is not necessarily the ethanol, but like some little fucker, some weird chemicals in there.
Yeah.
And like your immune system is like, what's that little fucker?
Yeah.
And in the course of trying to like get rid of this thing, it's really just a little bit of twig, but like your immune system is like, what the fuck?
yeah.
It like overreacts.
Yeah, like shits the bed, makes your brain inflamed,
Right.
makes your, liver inflamed. Yeah, so that's possible. For example, sulfites, you'll hear some people saying like, "Oh, I don't react well to sulfites."
Sure.
That might be an immune system thing, an inflammation thing.
By the way, is that like a real thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's real.
Okay, that's cool.
I mean, arguably, pretty much nobody actually reacts well to sulfites. It's
Sure.
like there's not like a good reaction to it. You know what I mean?
Right. At the end of the day, we are talking about what is functionally poison.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically.
Yeah. Some people are more poisoned by poison. In fact, in a way, they're the lucky ones. Because their body's reacting.
Appropriately.
Yeah, very honestly. Right? Like all the rest of us are living in these wasp Puritan bodies that are just like, hide the shame, clean. You know? But we're all dying equally as much from liver damage.
Ooh, yeah, that's a nice way to think about it.
Yeah.
So part of the reason why this is complicated is that there's two other things kind of wrapped up in being hungover. One of them is dehydration.
Right.
And the other one is shitty sleep.
Right, because alcohol is a diarrhea, right? Like it, like it makes you...
Yeah, it's a diuretic. Good job, Nathan. Yeah, I was so close.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is sleep disturbance.
I actually don't know what a diuretic is, and literally the reason is because it sounds so much like diarrhea that I'm like I poop the same.
A diuretic is something that makes you produce more urine and get rid of more water. Caffeine is an example of a diuretic, and
Cool.
alcohol is also a diuretic.
Yeah.
And so in that process, you get dehydrated. A lot of people don't drink enough water to replenish it.
Why do you get dehydrated? Like, how does a diuretic function that it would make you dehydrated?
It affects your kidneys in such a way that it just literally flushes more water through the system.
I thought maybe the coffee was like floating through and it's like, get me more water. And it's like, I'm going to take that water. I'm going to take you.
So what it does is both of those things affect your brain.
Right.
And reduces the secretion of something called anti-diuretic hormone.
Oh, interesting.
So when you reduce anti-diuretic hormone, you then produce more urine and just volume
Basically,
of water.
your body's tricked into peeing more than it really needs to.
Yes.
Interesting.
And so in that process, you lose a lot of water. People do not drink enough water to replenish that because you're drunk and you're not making good decisions. And then the other thing is sleep disturbance. And so alcohol can make you sleepy, but then usually your sleep quality is really poor. You'll like wake up a bunch of times in the middle of the night.
Right.
So then if one of the kind of classic symptoms of a hangover is being tired,
That's in
and,
part
like,
just because you slept shitty.
headaches,
Right.
those things can be symptoms of sleep disturbance and dehydration.
Out of curiosity, sometimes I'll drink and I'll wake up really early and like I'm not happy about it. Dad says it's because like all the sugars from the alcohol finally got digested or processed by my body at that point. And so I'm getting kicked up by like all the ATP. Is that right at all?
That's a good question. You might have kind of like a small amount of extra energy from the dehydration of like some of the sugars and carbohydrates that are hanging out in the alcohol.
That's cool.
I doubt that that's the reason why you're waking up.
I'm waking up because in my dream the man chases me.
Yeah,
And the scissors go chop chop.
it's the night terrors. It's the night terror. Yeah. But yes, there's all these dehydration issues and there's all of the sleep disturbance issues. And, you know, what they find is that, okay, if you help people stay hydrated, like if you make sure that they stay hydrated throughout the drinking process, they still get hungover.
Okay.
And they still experience some of those symptoms of the hangover. So while a lot of them might get worse because of dehydration, you'll feel extra shitty.
Right.
Just being hydrated is not actually sufficient to get rid of a hangover.
Okay. And then what if we give them Ambien?
To sleep better?
Yeah.
Yeah, that also does not alleviate all of the issues.
Yeah.
That's also,
instead, they just sleepwalk it straight
I
to the
want to
street.
say, taking drugs while consuming alcohol is extremely dangerous.
Except Xanax.
So, for the love of God, do not do any of the things Nathan says about that. Very dangerous. So then, another potential thing that might be causing a hangover is metabolic changes while your body is breaking down the alcohol. So one of the things that they do know is that there's less of something called gluconeogenesis.
Okay.
Okay. And what that means, so neogenesis means...
Is a TV show. Too Freudian for my taste.
Neogenesis means making new, and glucose, talking about glucose.
That's why that show's called that.
So isn't it neon? Neon Genesis Evangelion?
Whoopsie.
I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Very confusing. Anyway, so gluconeogenesis means making your own glucose.
Okay.
And because you have less of it, people's blood sugar levels can drop while they're hungover.
Okay.
And alcohol can stimulate insulin production, so you can have kind of like really low glucose levels. You could be hypoglycemic. And you can have these other metabolic issues. Ethanol gets turned into acetaldehyde, which is toxic as hell. That's actually much more toxic than ethanol. But it usually very quickly gets turned into something not very toxic, acetate. And then that whole thing gets kind of filtered out of your body. But you can have increased lactic acid levels, and the higher your lactic acid levels can make you feel more hungover. One thought is that this hypoglycemia, which is kind of like with some people with diabetes, can make you feel really shitty in your body, right?
So you could call a hangover like targeted contextual diabetes.
Diabetes is usually a really kind of more specific thing, but they do share that in common.
This is topical diabetes.
So they both have this hypoglycemia.
Okay.
So that was one idea. Maybe a hangover is just hypoglycemia.
Okay.
Right? So then they did some studies, and they give people fructose, and they gave them glucose, and they gave them intravenous glucose and everything to try to keep them normoglycemic the whole time.
Yeah.
And they succeeded. They checked the blood sugar levels, and they're like, blood sugar levels look good. People still hungover as fuck.
So this is an interesting study then. Like you're just getting people hammered.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then in some cases, you're giving them a lot of fruit juice.
Yeah.
And then in other cases, you're giving them like IV bags with glucose. And it didn't matter.
Didn't help.
They still got hungover. Okay.
It's because they're not using Sean's miracle cure. Listen to the full episode and we'll tell you.
So the hypoglycemia is basically a red herring, right? And there's a lot of red herrings
In Sean's miracle cure.
Yeah. One of the key ingredients is blended red herring.
Yeah, really red.
So we mentioned that congeners can affect the severity of hangover.
Right.
And
What's an example of a congenital in in one of these drinks?
yeah, so aside from like the sulfites and the resveratrol that we mentioned, another example is methanol. So
Methanol's like bad in you, isn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and if you drink,
Don't we fuel cars with methanol? Or like no, we make fuel from crops and it turns into methanol, right?
a lot of the fuel when you're talking about biofuel is ethanol, the one that we drink.
But we can't drink that because it's also got methanol.
Probably, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So, for example, laboratory ethanol usually has some methanol mixed in,
Yeah.
so that you don't take it home and drink it.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's not good for you.
That's hilarious. So they add the methanol later
Yes.
because otherwise they know you're gonna get sauced.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Because they sell it as like 200 proof ethanol. It's pure ethanol. So you could take that and you could water it down with water and basically have vodka.
Right.
Except it's got methanol in it. Don't do it.
Wow.
And methanol can do all kinds of terrible things in your body. One of the things is that methanol gets broken down by the same sort of enzymes as ethanol, but it gets turned into formaldehyde. And formaldehyde is very, very bad for you.
Isn't that what they preserve things in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is a good...
So wouldn't you be preserved? If
in the kind of way where you'll be very pristine, but very dead.
Like one of those suburban moms we were talking about. So that is what Chardonnay's doing
They're
to them.
dead on the inside. So because they use the same enzyme, it's actually one reason why if you have methanol poisoning,
Yeah.
you're supposed to drink ethanol.
Oh.
because they'll basically work with the same enzyme, and if you drink enough ethanol, the ethanol will get processed and not turn into formaldehyde.
That's cool.
And you'll have enough time to go through a kind of more rigorous detoxification process.
Okay, so that's a pretty gnarly congenital that's like really fucking with you.
What I will say is that drinking a lot of methanol is very bad. Okay?
Yeah.
But a lot of alcoholic drinks have trace amounts of methanol in it.
Okay.
Just in the natural process of making, not like it's been added or anything like that. So there is a little bit of methanol in some of your alcohol beverages. It's an allowable amount. It gets tested and like checked to make sure it's not too much or anything.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel good. So it probably contributes to hangover severity. And then, last thing, hangovers are probably related to inflammatory responses.
Okay.
It's possible that a lot of how we feel about aches and pains and headaches, all of those things actually happen during inflammatory responses in your body. And it might be because the ethanol is kind of setting that off, the ethanol and the congeners. So that might be the most reasonable hypothesis as to like what we're feeling with the hangover.
Okay.
And so in some cases, taking something like an ibuprofen before you go to bed after drinking or something like that might be able to take a little bit of the edge off.
Okay.
Not acetaminophen. Tylenol, not Tylenol.
You're just saying a bunch of gibberish words to me now, though. I don't know what
Ibuprofen's Advil or Motrin.
Okay. Well, what's the difference between ibuprofen and acetaminophen?
Yes. So acetaminophen or Tylenol is another pain reliever and also fever reducer.
I mean, how does it work differently on a chemical level?
Right. Acetaminophen, for whatever reason, also gets processed by your liver and can damage your liver.
Okay.
Like a lot of times, most people, when they take acetaminophen, it doesn't cause any problems. But if it hits your liver when your liver's already working hard and getting fucked up by alcohol, it can severely damage your liver. Okay. So do not take Tylenol with alcohol.
Wish you had told me last year before I needed a new liver.
Well, you're dead now, so it's okay.
Dude, think about the implications of that. If I was actually dead now, we would be proving undeadness. I would be necessarily a corpse that still was conscious. We would have defied the natural laws of nature. And we'd have embarked upon an entirely new field of science.
Are you fucking wasted? What the shit is this?
No, but think about that. Think about what you said.
I'm not gonna think about it.
I'm alive and yet dead.
Oh, you're Schrodinger's titty.
I mean, it's a hypothetical because that didn't happen. I'm
right.
alive.
That's what I'm saying.
But what if? What if? Science is about the what if, Sean.
Not that kind of what if. That's just dumb. Okay. So that is kind of what is a hangover. I mean, the main takeaway is we're not totally sure, right?
Yeah.
But then, what can you do about it?
Yeah.
So before you get it, what I will say is that I've read some studies. These studies are moderately questionable in that a lot of them are funded by companies that make something that's supposed to help with hangovers.
Right.
So there is kind of this monetary aspect with it. But I will relay that information with the caveat that, like, who knows, okay?
Right.
So one of the things is called a rapid recovery, and it's a product that you take after drinking, but before you go to sleep. And then if you wake up during the night, then you can also drink a little bit of it, like keep it by your bedside, right? And it has a bunch of things in it. One of the things it has is cysteine, which is an amino acid. And hypothetically, it's supposed to react with the acetaldehyde, which is that toxic thing that ethanol gets turned into. The only thing I'll say about that is I don't actually buy that, because acetaldehyde gets turned into acetate very quickly in the scheme of things. But whatever. There's also vitamin C, a bunch of B vitamins, which are supposed to help you kind of feel all jazzed up and energetic.
Right.
Like B1 and B6. And then it also has dextrose, which is added for flavor. It's a kind of sugar. And who knows, maybe it gets broken down into glucose and it can help with the hypoglycemia thing. But what I will say is that the study, as I read it, both had men and women and was double-blinded, which means that compared to a lot of the other studies I read on stuff kind of like this,
It's pretty good.
yeah, like some of these other ones that I'm going to be talking about were just done in dudes, or like everyone knew what they were taking, you know what I mean? So a double-blinded trial is like an actually pretty well put together one.
What they forget to mention is that there was just one man and one woman. And they were just blind. They just blinded each other.
Oh, that was the kind of double-blinded.
Yeah.
I see. So what they saw with this stuff, the results were self-reported, so people describing how they felt.
Yeah.
And it was increased general well-being.
Okay, well, wait a minute. Increased general well-being just means, like, they feel a little better about their marriage.
Job's doing well. They really crushed
Yeah.
the meeting with the boss.
You know, the economy's not so bad. Right? GDP growth has been high.
Reduced headaches, reduced nausea, improved cognitive function.
Okay.
Okay. I think this is only available in Australia.
Oh, really?
So go fuck yourself, I guess. I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay, well then, I mean, but for us people of Asian descent, Mom used to just have me suck a ginseng root.
Yes. So ginseng juices have been tested out in some trials in like Korea, for example. And for some reason, the studies that I've read only used men.
Well, it's Korea.
And they saw a reduction in headache and nausea, although their placebo group was pretty dumb.
Just a bunch of women who they're like, you don't get a drink. How do you feel now?
It was just like they were complaining that like the juice has a certain kind of flavor. And they're like, the placebo group knows that they're just drinking water. You know what I mean?
So
Like,
that's the problem, is they need to not find, like, Asians.
All right.
We should get hired by ginseng.
yeah. By
The ginseng lobby?
Big ginseng.
Big ginseng.
Okay. So, you know, these things like the ginseng juice and rapid recovery, that stuff you're supposed to take like right after drinking.
Right.
Or in the night. But like, what about once you actually have your hangover?
Right.
Like, what the fuck are you supposed to do then?
What's plan
Right?
B?
Yeah. So part 1 is drink some water, because aside from being hungover, you're probably dehydrated. And that also doesn't feel good.
Hey, here's some, like, folk Nathan Slavic wisdom.
Give it to me.
Every glass of alcohol, also drink a glass of water.
I have never seen you do that.
Okay.
When do you do that?
At, like, harder parties that we go
Oh,
together.
okay, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I only see you at like the fancy cocktail parties.
That's true. And at cocktail parties, I don't want to embarrass myself by drinking water.
Right.
There's a social stigma around water.
It's a
at
pleb
fancy
drink.
parties.
Yeah.
Yeah, water's for the poor. But when I'm at the common parties,
Right.
you drink a glass of alcohol, but then drink a glass of water. And sure, you're going to pee more. You're going to pee more anyway, boys.
Yep.
You got diarrhea, right?
Diuretic.
Diuretic.
Yes. Okay. Drink some fucking water. Get some electrolytes into your body, right?
So are electrolytes real?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like all the people who say it has electrolytes are people who I don't trust.
Oh, yes. So electrolytes gets used as a buzzword, but electrolytes means minerals, basically. It's like salt.
What makes them so electric?
It's because they're ions. They're charged. So they have positive charge and negative charge.
Okay.
Yeah. And they are important. They're important for keeping your blood buffered and for a lot of functions inside of cells. And the main thing is that we lose a lot of them by sweating.
What does it mean your blood is buffered?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I said that real quick without really kind of going into it. So being a buffered solution means that it has stuff in it that keeps the pH from changing really quickly.
Okay.
And your blood is slightly basic.
Yeah, I'm basic.
It's a pH of 7.4.
Well, it's very basic. My blood loves osmosis, Jones.
You're a real basic bitch.
Yeah.
So your blood is slightly basic, and it really does not like changing by very much.
Right, sure.
Because you can have all kinds of serious issues with the cells that your blood is, kind of delivering shit to.
Going in
Yeah.
Yeah.
So electrolytes are important for that, and then a lot of functions within your body.
Okay.
So you secrete electrolytes when you sweat and
Right.
stuff like that. And so you should drink a fruit juice or eat
Yeah,
something.
get some electrolytes. Aspirin, ibuprofen, acetaminophen, take all of that
Not
to get your
acetaminophen, you son of a bitch. Don't do it.
Methanol.
It impacts your liver. Don't be so naughty. Okay, now, I've also heard...
Remember, we're not a medical podcast, so you shouldn't listen to me or Sean.
Right. Don't
Maybe
listen to either one of
acetaminophen
them.
is good for you.
No! No, you son of a bitch. It's not.
There's no one you can trust.
Oh my god. Are you in the pocket of big Tylenol?
Yeah.
What's going on
Who
here?
told?
Okay. While I was looking into this, I've heard of a few interesting things out there. Something called a Myers cocktail and other IV treatments. Okay? And they are a bag of liquid, water with some things like salt and potassium dissolved in it, and then usually some vitamins, B vitamins, some glucose, vitamin C, and it hangs in a little bag, and then you stick a needle in your arm, and then the bag just goes directly into your bloodstream.
Yeah, that sounds like such a bad idea to me. Not in terms of the science necessarily. It just seems like who's poking your arm, right? Because what if
Right.
they miss a vein?
Yes.
That's a bad thing.
Yeah, and what I've seen this advertised as sometimes are things called hangover buses. Have you heard about this?
I guess I did read the notes. That's
Okay.
not the right answer, though. No, I actually had not before reading the notes.
Yes, so there are those hangover buses, and the main idea with the hangover bus is like they can drive up to like a club at 2 a.m. or something like that. People are staggering out of the club. They can hop into the hangover bus, and then sit down while like a nurse or something comes up and pops an IV into you.
Isn't that the problem, though, as a nurse or something?
I think it's a huge problem. That sounds terrifying to me. But basically then they just kind of drive around to the next club while you just like sit back and get this IV bag of stuff going in.
That sounds way too close to an It's Always Sunny joke. You know?
It does sound like an It's Always Sunny.
Like, that's like definitely Charlie in the B plot is like driving around in a hangover bus, but he accidentally is just putting morphine into people.
Well, so that's one of the things I will say is that the IV bags have B vitamins in them. And
Sure.
B vitamins typically make you feel like energized. Like the 5-hour energy drinks have a lot of B vitamins in them. That's like kind of where you get the energy from those. It sort of makes you feel flushed and like you can go out and you can like pump some weights or whatever. So in a certain sense, it kind of masks some of the effects of the hangover.
Right.
It makes you feel less tired kind of temporarily while you're getting this infusion of B vitamins directly into your bloodstream.
But it's not like the American Journal of Psychology did a test on this.
So, to my knowledge, I have found no clinical trials demonstrating that these help, but I have read some anecdotal reports with people saying that it made them feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
Though, again, it might just be the B vitamins. It's definitely, I will say, for IV administrations, you feel it a lot faster than eating it.
Sure.
Right? So you can feel the effects really quickly, although it's not as easy as eating something. Right? I mean, like you can just drink a lot of shit. Actually, popping a needle into your vein is a little bit harder to pull off. Yeah, and then the other couple of things I'll mention is like hair of the dog, and then something called prairie oysters.
I mean, prairie oysters is one of the things that it's like a euphemism, right? Like you tell the parents you're gonna go dance prairie oysters, but you know, you're really getting close to the kids.
All right.
Yeah, slurping oysters. Put a little horseradish on there. Make it hot.
So let's start with hair of the dog. You know what that is, right?
Okay, so hair of the dog is where you drink more.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Hair of the dog that bit you.
Yeah. And hair of the dog kind of works in a certain sense in that usually you do not feel hungover anymore.
Right. You
For
feel
now.
drunk. Sure.
Eventually you will feel shitty.
Right.
Things will catch up to you.
Right.
And then usually when you're hungover, your blood alcohol content is gone.
Right.
All of it's been processed into the acetaldehyde and the acetate. So like you're in the recovery process.
Mm-hmm.
Your liver's already shook. It's not a great time to drink more,
Right.
but it can make the hangover feeling go away a little bit.
A little bit.
I don't super advise it. And then prairie oysters are raw egg yolk and Tabasco sauce and some like pepper and Worcestershire sauce. How do you say that word?
Isn't it Worcestershire?
Sure.
Yeah, Worcestershire.
It's just, I feel like it has more letters than that.
Yeah, but that's just England, right?
It's like Worcestershire.
Maybe it's secretly a Welsh word. Like the original spelling is actually like Worcestershire, and then like they did us a blessing by calling it Worcestershire.
Yeah, and a little dab of that.
Alright,
and then you
cool.
slurp down that egg yolk.
Gross.
Yeah, so for that one...
If it has Worcestershire sauce, it's probably not from the prairie then, right? It must be from like Worcestershire oysters.
I don't know why it's called a prairie oyster.
I don't know why it's called Worcestershire.
Kind of neither one of those things really match up to what it is. But I've read some explanations for why people think it helps. None of them make any sense to me.
Okay.
So I think maybe it's just so gross that like, it makes you forget your troubles a little bit or something on the way down.
Right.
But people have put out ideas like, oh, it helps with the detoxification of the acetaldehyde or something like that. But usually when you feel the worst from your hangover, all that stuff's already detoxified.
Right.
So I can't see how it helps with anything.
It comes back to the metaphysics of it.
Which metaphysics of it?
Well, the thing that, we're coming to the end of this episode, and,
Yep.
and the thing that we have scant discussed, as per usual, is that hangovers are a result of sin. And they're a result of the sinful decisions you've made, and it's prayer that heals them, but not prayer to the dead God we pretend still reigns, who died in the fires of World War I. Prayer to Petri Dish. Sign up to our Patreon. Sign up and pray at our altar. Patreon.com/Petri Dish. Pray, sir. Pray, madam.
Oh my god.
Remove that hangover. Listen to us weekly. Tweet us at petridish.twitter.com/pray.
You cock. Why do you not even know our Twitter handle? Oh my god. Jesus.
That's pretty good.
Whew. Okay. But yes, you can tweet at us at Dish Podcast. I handle the Twitter account, so if you have something mean you want to say about Nathan, you can pass it along to me, but just recognize don't yell at me on Twitter. I'll just pass it along to Nathan.
Sean insults me enough that I won't even realize someone had tweeted him.
All right.
He'll say, "You son of a bitch!" I'll be like, "Well, it's another Monday."
So we have a Gmail, petridishpod@gmail.com. Nathan mentioned the Patreon. We should thank Stacy Song, our sound engineer.
Brian Allen, our art lord.
And thank you guys for listening.
Ich bin ein science and alcohol.
We'll see you guys next week.
Da 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 da